Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my presentation of my creating project for 709. I want to begin with discussing the concept that I had for my first lesson, and that was that I needed it to be unique. I teach art for kindergarten through 5th grade, and I wanted a project that would use technology for my 5th graders. I wanted it something that they haven't done before, and I wanted to make sure that it actually fostered some creativity in their artwork. I've been having a hard time with my class lately of having them to come up with interesting ideas. They seem to fall flat, and they don't seem to be motivated into wanting to do interesting ideas or use their imagination. So I also wanted for this project to be a collaborative one where they can do with other students, that they can partner up. There's very rarely do I have a project that they need to team up with someone else and use and play off of each other. It's usually just individual projects. And finally, I wanted something that could be used not just in the art room, but could also be used in other classes and in future grades, such as 6th, 7th, and 8th. Which is where I led to Mind mapping app. In fact, Mindomo, as it's called, was the ultimate thing that led me to doing this project. I was interested in mind mapping, which is getting your thoughts onto a conceptual layout of images, words, that is easier to explain your ideas. I went through a lot through my research to find one that would be both easy to use and flexible, meaning you can use it in multiple different ways. And it led me to Mindomo. Let's take a look at Mindomo right now. I'm going to do a brief demonstration and what the students have to do at the beginning of the lesson. Here we see the layout for Mindomo. Up at the top we have the topic tasks that you want to add, font changes, themes. This is all having to do with the layout of your mind map. On the side here we have all the things that you can insert, such as links, images, multimedia, icons, and then I have one started here for you, and I'll go over what I have done just so that you can see what the students would have to do. To begin, I needed to come up with a project that would use Mindomo in a way that was both interesting and effective in terms of having them understand curriculum. What I came up with is a way that students can use what they've learned throughout the year, such as the elements and principles of art and art styles, and combine them to create their own project. Normally I give them projects with criteria, such as I give them a portrait to do, and they have to include this, this, and this, these materials. It's all done for them. But at the end of the year, I feel like in order to enhance their imagination, their creation, what if they were the ones who came up with the project? They would have to include certain elements, they would have to include certain principles, and then they would come up with a unique project that I haven't come up with, but they come up with. So this is an example of what they would do. First, I would introduce them to Mindomo, like I am with you. Then I would have them work with a partner in creating a mind map that shows what they were thinking for their art project. In the case of this project, they need to come up with a project, an artwork that includes one principle of design. These are the principles of design right here. And one element of art. These are the elements. They also need to come up with a style of artwork, and I have the art styles up here, along with materials that they would use to create that artwork, which are over here. Mydomo really does make it easy for students to figure out their ideas, separate them, come up with certain elements for their project. So I'm going to go over a little bit for you. I start off with just a simple bubble in the center saying art project, elements, and principles. I've already included an image into emphasis, and what's great about Mydomo is that you can include, very simply, images from all over the web. And let me show you. I'm going to click on pattern, and I'm going to come over to the left, and I'm going to select add image. What happens is it opens up a window where you can pick your search engine, in this case Google Images, and you can type in anything that you want, in this case pattern. It's a principle of art, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to do search. What it does, it finds images for you, which is great. Wonderful, wonderful images for you to look up. And it finds the top 64, which is great, so you don't have to search all the way through. One that represents pattern. This is a great one. So I just click it, and I click set. I close the window, and you can see now it's loading it up. So it finds it. If it's too big, you click on the image, you just drag the corner, and there you go. We have an example for pattern. Make it a little smaller. I can even drag. Everything's movable, so it's very easy to spread things out. And now have pattern. Once the student decides what texture, or I'm sorry, what element or principle they want to use and what materials and art style, they simply, to show me that they have picked that, they can either create an arrow like this one that I've done with texture. We have scales as a texture that a student would use, and point it back to that's going to be part of my art project. Or another great wonderful thing is they can click on emphasis. Maybe that's my other principle that I want to use, and I can go over here, click on add icon, and either do a thumbs up or a check mark or a smiley face. Let's do a thumbs up, and it adds a thumbs up to the element or the principle that you have here to indicate that that's the one that they're going to do. You can change up a whole bunch of things here. You can add web links, for example, Aboriginal art here. It's a little dot, and we can zoom in. Down at the bottom, there's a zoom feature. And drag, zoom and drag. There's a little button here. You click on that, it goes directly to a website that I've linked up that shows Aboriginal art. So it's very useful not only for the students, but for the teacher. Teachers can create web mind maps for their students, pre-made ones that students can get on and can just simply click and look around. Let's get back to our example. The one feature that I truly love about this is it's so easy to use and highly functional and customizable. Right now I have a plain gray background, but I can change that. I have all these other themes I can use. Plus you can customize the current theme, or you can change the map background. All up to you. The layout you can change. You just have to click on a bubble. Right now the layout is, as you can see, checked off as a concept map, but I can change this entire map to maybe go all the way to the right, and then it changes every single thing that I've done and faces it all to the right. So it's really, really cool that you can do it on the fly. It doesn't affect anything. You don't have to retype anything in. It will automatically change it back to where it was before. So I'm going to keep it to, I kind of like the original chart here because it shows nice even paths like so. And that's what students will do with their partner. They have to come up with both a possible element, a possible principle, and an art style, whether it's a landscape, a portrait, abstract, Aboriginal, whatever they came up with and whatever we did during the course of the entire year, they can use. And finally, come up with materials that they want to use. In this case, this student looks like they're going to go for clay because they have a big smiley face next to clay, and that's how they're going to create their texture, which in this case is scales. So that's how students are going to be using Mindomo for their first lesson. This is to come up with the idea for their project. Let's go back to the PowerPoint that I had. And if we take a look, we'll go to the next slide. The next lesson that I have, lesson 2, is for presenting their project. So the first lesson would be coming up with the idea for their project. They will then, over the course of a few weeks, create their project. And finally, they will present their project. And in this case, they're going to be presenting their project with Prezi, which is a presentation application that I thought would be a lot more interesting than PowerPoint. The reason why I want to do this, the reason why I came up with using Prezi, is that I wanted students to be able to illustrate and show how they created their artwork, their creative process, from designing to using the materials to showing the steps to creating the artwork. I wanted it to be easy, not tedious, interesting, and definitely not boring. I've had experience with students, I've done it with my 5th graders with PowerPoint, where it tends to be a little boring. We're looking at a PowerPoint right now, very static. It's to the point, but for me, for my artistic students, for how I want to teach them, I needed something a little bit with more pizzazz. I also wanted something that they can utilize prior work with, and in this case, their prior work is the knowledge that they've gained throughout the year, plus the artwork that they are working on for this project. Prezi was, to me, the best choice. After looking through a lot of different presentation software programs, Prezi was easy to use, free. It is a definite extension of the prior project of Mindomo, so kids will be familiar with using a software application that takes their thoughts, their ideas, and spreads them out into a nice layout. It also enhances their creativity. You'll see when we demonstrate Prezi that you can do things that will not only look good, but also be a connection to the project. So let's take a look. We'll go onto a demonstration. Here we go. Here is my Prezi for my final art project. Let's take a look at the layout first. We have frames and arrows, inserting images, templates right here. These templates are great because you can change, and they have tons of templates. You can change the original, and not only that, you can change the fonts and the theme within that template, which is absolutely fantastic for customization. Really brings out the individual students' work and their individual style in the presentation. You can even customize every element of this project, from the background to the foreground to the colors, which is really good. On the side here, you see the paths that we have. We can actually zoom in to each section here. If we click on the next slide, it will zoom in right to this slide. And here is what the students would have to do for their project. The first slide, students would have to show the elements and principles of art that they used. In this case, the student would have used texture, and they chose emphasis. Just like on their mind map, they decided, oh, I'm going to use emphasis, and I'm going to use texture for my project. So that would be in the first slide that they would do. In the second slide, they would have to show what style of work they want to create. In this case, they've decided landscape, and they gave reasons why. Landscapes can show great texture, and they're going to focus on one section of the landscape with texture. So they're really going to get specific. If we move on to the next slide, they will demonstrate the materials that they've used. In this case, paper, paint, glue, fabric, to create their landscape. The project for lesson 2 that I described on my wiki and that I turned in simply allows for the first 3 slides to be done in class. After the first 3 slides, they will then go home and work with their partner. The great thing about this, it's web-based, so anywhere you can find an internet connection, on a tablet, even on a phone you can actually view Prezis, but I'd recommend either a tablet or a laptop or a desktop computer, and they can actually work together. You can actually share the link to your Prezi and someone else can edit with you. So it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. I've done the first 3 slides here. The next slides would be the steps in creating your Prezi. In this case, we have step 1. Here's what you need for the first step. Another cool feature is that you can add music. So if I go up to present, which is what students will do, it says allow full screen with keyboard controls, and you can. As you can see, I have added music to my Prezi. And we can move on to the next slide. It will zoom in. We can move on to the next slide. Zooms in. So students can create wonderful Prezis for their projects. I feel like it's going to be a great project for them to do, and it incorporates the amazing functionality of Prezi, a wonderful innovative technology. And that is my lesson, the second lesson. Thank you for listening.